What does it mean to bargain with the devil? Bargaining with the devil refers to the challenging decision of whether to negotiate with an adversary who has wronged you or seems likely to do so in the future. It's about grappling with the dilemma of finding a resolution versus standing your ground on principle, even when a mutually beneficial outcome seems impossible. Why is the decision to negotiate or fight so difficult? This decision is challenging because it often involves navigating intense emotions like anger, betrayal, and the desire for revenge. These emotions can cloud judgment and make it difficult to assess the situation objectively. Additionally, there's the moral dilemma of potentially legitimizing the adversary's actions by negotiating with them. Are there historical examples of this dilemma? Yes, two prominent examples are Winston Churchill's refusal to negotiate with Hitler during World War II and Nelson Mandela's decision to initiate negotiations with the apartheid regime in South Africa. These contrasting approaches highlight the complexity of the issue and the absence of easy answers. How does demonization impact these decisions? Demonization, or viewing the adversary as purely evil, can lead to distorted thinking and an unwillingness to explore potential solutions through negotiation. It fuels anger and makes it harder to recognize common ground or potential compromises. What if pragmatic interests clash with moral principles? This situation presents a significant challenge. For instance, in a business dispute where a competitor has acted unethically, pursuing legal action might be financially draining, while negotiating feels like condoning their behavior. Carefully weighing the potential consequences of each option and considering long-term implications is crucial in such cases. Is there a framework for making these tough decisions? Yes, the author proposes a framework that encourages a disciplined thought process, weighing potential costs and benefits, and considering alternatives to negotiation. This framework also highlights traps that can lead to poor decision-making, such as succumbing to anger or making overly optimistic assumptions about the adversary. How does the case of the Taliban illustrate this framework? Following the September 11th attacks, the decision to refuse negotiation with the Taliban, despite their offer, involved analyzing the interests of both parties, the potential costs and benefits of negotiation versus military action, and the likelihood of a successful negotiated outcome. Ultimately, the analysis suggested that refusing negotiation was the wiser course of action. What is the key takeaway from the bargaining with the devil framework? The key takeaway is that navigating such complex decisions requires a balanced approach. It involves acknowledging and managing emotions, avoiding the trap of demonization, thoroughly analyzing the situation, and carefully considering the potential costs and benefits of both negotiation and resistance. What happened with Bycuda Corporation? Research company licensed its design and know-how for the free-flow stent to Bycuda Corporation for exclusive manufacturing and sales rights in Asia, excluding China. However, Research Co. discovered that Bycuda essentially cloned the product, renaming it EasyFlow, and started selling it in China, violating the agreement. What are the legal options for addressing Bycuda's breach of contract? Research Co. could pursue legal action against Bycuda in China, Japan, or California. However, each jurisdiction presents challenges. China, difficult to enforce judgments and protect trade secrets. Japan, limited trade secret protection and costly litigation. California, jurisdiction may be challenged as Bycuda has no US presence. However, if successful, chances of winning on merit are higher. What are the arguments for and against negotiating with Bycuda? Arguments for negotiation. Preserve a profitable relationship. Bycuda's business is significant to ResearchGo's revenue. Avoid costly litigation. Legal action in any jurisdiction will be expensive and time-consuming. Potential for a mutually beneficial agreement. Renegotiating the contract to include China and a revised royalty structure could benefit both companies. Arguments against negotiation. Rewarding bad behavior. Negotiating might encourage future breaches of contract. Damage to reputation. Being seen as tolerating contract violations could harm ResearchGo's reputation. Lack of trust. Ensuring Bycuda's compliance in the future is a major concern. What factors should be considered when deciding whether to negotiate with a party that has violated an agreement? Interests. Identify both ResearchGo's and Bycuda's core needs and concerns underlying their positions. Alternatives BATNA. Analyze the best alternatives for both sides if negotiation fails. Potential negotiated outcomes. Explore possible agreements that benefit both parties more than their alternatives. Costs. Evaluate tangible and intangible costs of negotiation, including financial, time, reputational, and precedent-setting implications. Implementation. Determine the likelihood of the agreement being honored and establish enforcement mechanisms. How can ResearchCo protect its interests if it decides to negotiate with Bicuda? ResearchCo should involve legal counsel. Ensure the new agreement protects ResearchCo, is intellectual property, and includes strong enforcement mechanisms. Consider a sliding royalty scale. This could incentivize Bicuda's compliance and align both companies' financial interests. Address the China market. Negotiate terms that satisfy Bicuda's desire to participate in the Chinese market. Clear communication. Establish clear expectations and consequences for any future breaches. Is it ever right to negotiate with an enemy or someone who has acted unethically? This is a complex question. While there's no easy answer, consider pragmatism versus principle. Balancing practical considerations with moral values is crucial. Consequences. Decisions impact various stakeholders, and personal values shouldn't necessarily override a rational analysis favoring negotiation. Costs and risks. When resisting negotiation based on moral grounds, ensure you're willing to bear the potential costs and risks involved. What is the significance of recognition and legitimacy in such situations? These factors address the moral and ethical dimensions. Recognition. Acknowledging the harm or injustice caused by the other party's actions. Legitimacy. Determining if engaging with the other party confers undeserved legitimacy on their actions. Negotiating doesn't necessarily mean condoning past behavior, but it's vital to weigh these factors carefully. What key takeaway can be learned from the Sharansky example? While not directly comparable to a business dispute, Sharansky's experience highlights moral intuition versus rational analysis. Finding a balance between gut feelings and logical reasoning is important in challenging situations. Personal values. While upholding personal values is essential, consider the broader impact of your decisions, especially as a representative of others. Courage and wisdom. Decisions driven by careful consideration, awareness of the risks, and a willingness to bear the consequences are crucial for wise decision-making. Who was Rudolf Kastner, and why is his story considered controversial? Rudolf Kastner was a Jewish leader in Hungary during World War II. He is known for negotiating with Adolf Eichmann, a high-ranking Nazi official, to save Jewish lives. Kastner's actions, particularly his role in organizing the Kastner train that transported 1,684 Jews to safety in Switzerland, have generated intense debate. The controversy stems from the fact that Kastner made difficult choices in desperate circumstances. He chose to negotiate with the Nazis to save lives, even though it meant collaborating with a regime responsible for horrific atrocities. Critics accused him of sacrificing the majority of Hungarian Jews to save a select few, including members of his own family. While he was eventually exonerated of collaborating with the Nazis, the moral complexities of his actions continued to fuel discussion. What were the main arguments for and against negotiation with the Nazis in Kastner's time? Arguments for negotiation. Saving lives. The potential to save even a small number of lives was seen as a powerful justification, given the Nazis' genocidal intentions. Exploiting divisions. Some Nazis, motivated by greed or a less fanatical commitment to ideology, might be open to bribery or deals. Buying time. Negotiation could delay deportations, offering a chance for the war to end or for other rescue opportunities to arise. Arguments against negotiation. Moral compromise. Negotiating with the perpetrators of mass murder could be seen as legitimizing their regime and normalizing their crimes. Unreliability of the Nazis. The Nazis had repeatedly broken promises and agreements, raising doubts about their willingness to honor any deal. Strengthening the enemy. Providing money or resources to the Nazis could contribute to their war effort and ultimately cause more harm. How did Winston Churchill approach the question of negotiating with Hitler? In May 1940, with the Allied military position crumbling, Churchill faced intense pressure to explore a negotiated peace with Hitler. He ultimately rejected this option, believing Hitler's ambitions. Hitler sought to dominate Europe and would demand unacceptable concessions that would compromise Britain's independence. Morale and resolve. Appearing weak or desperate for a deal would embolden the Nazis and undermine British morale at a critical juncture. The importance of timing. Delaying negotiations, even in the face of military setbacks, could potentially improve Britain's bargaining position in the future. How did Churchill's perspective differ from those who favored negotiation? Lord Halifax, Churchill's foreign secretary, was a key advocate for negotiation. he believed. Misunderstanding Hitler's aims. Hitler's primary goal was territorial expansion in Eastern Europe, not the conquest of Britain. Securing advantageous terms. By negotiating from a position of strength, Britain could potentially preserve its core interests, even if it meant making some concessions. Avoiding further bloodshed. Exploring a diplomatic solution could prevent further loss of life, particularly if the alternative was a protracted and likely unwinnable war. What were the key factors that influenced Nelson Mandela's decision to engage in negotiations with the South African government? Despite decades of imprisonment and a deep-seated opposition to apartheid, Mandela made the momentous decision to initiate talks with the South African government. Several factors motivated his decision. Shifting political landscape. The collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War weakened the arguments of hardliners on both sides. The imperative of peace. Mandela recognized that continued conflict would lead to a devastating civil war with catastrophic consequences for South Africa. Strategic calculation. He believed that negotiations, even with a regime he considered illegitimate, presented the best opportunity to achieve his ultimate goal of a democratic South Africa. What were some of the tactics Mandela used during his negotiations with the South African government? Mandela employed a multifaceted approach to negotiation, demonstrating both pragmatism and unwavering commitment to his principles. His tactics included building relationships. He made a concerted effort to connect with his adversaries on a personal level, even those who had been responsible for his imprisonment. Strategic concessions. He was willing to compromise on certain issues to advance the broader goal of ending apartheid and achieving a peaceful transition of power. Unwavering on core principles. He refused to budge on fundamental matters of principle, such as the dismantling of apartheid and the establishment of a one-person, one-vote electoral system. What are some of the common dilemmas faced by individuals who negotiate with adversaries considered to be devils? Negotiating with individuals or entities deemed morally reprehensible presents a profound ethical challenge. Key dilemmas include moral compromise versus pragmatism, weighing the potential benefits of negotiation against the risk of legitimizing an evil regime. Trust and deception, determining the extent to which one can trust the promises of an adversary with a history of dishonesty and brutality. Short-term gains versus long-term goals, balancing the desire for immediate concessions with the pursuit of a more just and lasting peace. What broader lessons can be learned from the experiences of Kastner, Churchill, and Mandela in dealing with difficult negotiation situations? The importance of thorough analysis. Decisions about negotiation, particularly with formidable adversaries, should be grounded in careful assessment of risks, potential benefits, and alternatives. The role of intuition and emotion. While emotional responses are natural, especially when dealing with adversaries who evoke strong moral outrage, it's crucial to balance gut reactions with reasoned analysis. The power of preparation and strategy. Effective negotiation requires a clear understanding of one's own goals and interests, as well as those of the other side. The significance of leadership. Individuals who take on the challenging task of negotiating with devils must be prepared to make difficult choices, navigate complex moral terrain, and potentially face criticism and condemnation, regardless of the outcome. Why were the labor relations between the San Francisco Symphony SFS musicians and management so contentious for 2 decades? Several factors contributed to the strained relationship. Firstly, the musicians lacked a formal authority structure and negotiation training, making it challenging to present a united front. They relied on hardball tactics and strikes, which fostered an adversarial atmosphere. Secondly, management, particularly the executive director at the time, Peter Pastryk, was perceived as unapproachable and unresponsive to musicians' concerns, further fueling animosity. Finally, both sides engaged in positional bargaining, focusing on individual demands rather than seeking mutually beneficial solutions. Each negotiation cycle seemed to start from a place of distrust and hostility. How did the SFS address its long-standing labor relations issues? The turning point came after a particularly damaging strike in 1996. Recognizing the need for change, the Hewlett Foundation funded a negotiation training program for both the musicians and management. This program, facilitated by Professor Robert M. Mnookin and Gary Friedman, aimed to equip both sides with the skills and understanding needed for more collaborative negotiations. What was the core concept behind the negotiation training program? The program emphasized interest-based bargaining, encouraging participants to move beyond entrenched positions and explore underlying interests and needs. Active listening techniques like looping were introduced to foster understanding and empathy. The goal was to transform the win-lose dynamic into a collaborative problem-solving process. What were the immediate outcomes of the negotiation training? The 1999 contract negotiation marked a significant shift. Both sides engaged in more open communication and problem-solving, resulting in a groundbreaking agreement that included innovative string relief provisions addressing musicians' physical and mental well-being. Notably, this contract period, unlike the 2 decades preceding it, did not involve a strike. Did the positive changes in negotiation style last? While the training had a lasting impact on individuals like Pastrike, who embraced interest-based negotiation, the SFS as a whole reverted to old patterns in subsequent contract negotiations. The absence of strikes was a significant improvement, but the process remained adversarial and deadline-driven. What can be learned from the SFS experience regarding conflict resolution? The SFS case highlights the complexities of institutional change. While negotiation training can equip individuals with valuable skills, transforming deeply ingrained organizational behaviors requires ongoing effort and commitment. The initial success suggests that positive change is possible, but sustaining it demands continuous reinforcement and a shared vision for a collaborative approach to labor relations. What was the role of external influence in the SFS case? The Hewlett Foundation played a crucial role by providing funding and suggesting the negotiation training program. The involvement of external facilitators like Mnookin and Friedman, perceived as neutral parties, also contributed to building trust and creating a safe space for dialogue. The SFS case illustrates how external pressure and guidance can create momentum for positive change, particularly in situations where internal resources are insufficient or the parties are entrenched in conflict. Are there broader implications from the SFS experience for managing conflict? The SFS case underscores that effective conflict resolution often requires a multifaceted approach. Training in negotiation and conflict management skills is valuable, but may not be sufficient to overcome deeply rooted organizational behaviors. Addressing systemic issues, such as power imbalances, lack of trust, and inadequate communication channels, is crucial for creating a culture that supports collaborative problem-solving. The SFS experience demonstrates that achieving lasting change in conflict management requires a sustained commitment to building relationships, fostering open communication, and embracing a shared vision for a more collaborative future. What are the 4 different divorces a couple may go through? Divorce is a complex process that can be understood as 4 interrelated dimensions. The spousal divorce. This refers to the end of intimacy between the couple, encompassing sexual, psychological, and social aspects. This dimension highlights that couples may disengage at different paces, leading to one spouse feeling blindsided. The economic divorce. This signifies the division of financial resources and the end of a single household economy. It often results in a reduced standard of living for both parties as 2 households must now be supported. The parental divorce. When children are involved, this aspect addresses the restructuring of parenting roles and the creation of new arrangements for raising children. It underscores the need for parents to navigate co-parenting despite the end of their spousal relationship. The legal divorce. This represents the formalization of financial and custodial arrangements through legal proceedings, establishing the framework for the post-divorce relationship. How can the emotional aspect of divorce affect negotiations? Divorce often carries significant emotional baggage, even in no-fault systems. Spouses may experience anger, blame, or a sense of betrayal. These emotions can hinder rational decision-making, making it difficult to reach mutually acceptable agreements. Recognizing and addressing these emotional undercurrents is crucial for productive negotiations. What is the significance of bargaining in the shadow of the law in divorce? This refers to the influence of legal precedents and statutes on the negotiation process. Understanding how a court might rule on issues like property division, child support, or custody can provide a reality check for both parties and guide them toward a fair and realistic outcome. What are the challenges and considerations surrounding shared custody arrangements? While shared custody can be beneficial in some cases, it requires a high degree of cooperation and communication between parents. It is most successful when parents can set aside their conflicts and prioritize the best interests of their children. In cases of high conflict, shared physical custody may not be feasible or in the children's best interest. What are common triggers for disputes over inherited property? Several factors can ignite family conflicts over inheritance. Indivisible property. Items with sentimental value or unique nature are difficult to divide equally. Uncertain value. Lack of clarity about market value can lead to disagreements over a fair price. Emotional attachment. Sentimentality tied to the property can cloud judgment and fuel conflict. Underlying family dynamics. Pre-existing tensions or unresolved issues can resurface and escalate disputes. How does mediation differ from other forms of dispute resolution, such as arbitration or litigation? Mediation, a voluntary process where a neutral third party facilitates communication and helps parties reach a mutually acceptable solution. The mediator does not impose a decision. Arbitration, a more adversarial process where parties present their case to a neutral third party, the arbitrator who renders a binding decision. Litigation, the most formal and adversarial approach involving court proceedings and a judge's ruling, which is enforceable by law. Why is it important for parties in a mediation to focus on interests rather than positions? Positions are the stated demands of each party, often presented as ultimatums. Interests, on the other hand, are the underlying needs, desires, and concerns that motivate those positions. By uncovering and addressing shared and individual interests, parties can explore creative options and reach a solution that satisfies their needs more effectively. What can you do if the other party in a family dispute seems unwilling to negotiate or demonizes you? Focus on understanding. Try to see the situation from their perspective and acknowledge their feelings without necessarily agreeing with their views. Practice active listening. Demonstrate genuine interest in their concerns and repeat back what you hear to ensure understanding. Separate intent from impact. Recognize that hurtful actions don't always stem from malicious intentions. Focus on the impact of their behavior on you. Seek common ground. Identify shared interests and goals to build a foundation for collaboration. Apologize when appropriate. Acknowledge your own contributions to the conflict or any past hurts, even if unintentional. By demonstrating empathy and a willingness to understand, you can potentially shift the dynamics of the conflict and open up possibilities for a more constructive dialogue.